We will get started because we've got a lot to cover this hour, and I'm hoping to get a bit of engagement from you guys and feedback as these presenters present what they're doing. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We do these calls monthly, specifically for the Microsoft Graph. These calls are alongside a lot of other calls in the M365 developer space. So if you are interested in things like SharePoint development and Microsoft Teams development, things like that, those are actually all aired at various different times, and you can go see that on the Office blogs as well. The next call is 8 a.m. on April the 2nd to the first Tuesday of April. And this week we're actually talking to two different speakers, specifically about codeless connections with Microsoft Graph Security API by Preeti, and a sneak peek at the PowerShell CLI SDK that we're working on and trying to get feedback on through this community call. So not something typically we would have done in the past, I guess, but Daryl actually is absent this week. He's on vacation in Disneyland with his kids, and but he really wanted to make sure that we covered this early to get as much feedback as possible. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that when we get to that in the second kind of key part of that presentation today. So I'm Jeremy Thake. I'm a principal PM in the Microsoft Graph team, and I kind of host these things and wrangle up speakers that will speak on the community call. Both in this case, we actually have two internal Microsoft people speaking, but we do love to get people from the community speaking. So if I guess my call out is that if you are doing anything really cool with the graph, if you're contributing an open source project, you've built a sample, or you've built something really compelling for your company that you're able to share, please reach out to me on Twitter or my email address, which is just jthake@microsoft.com. And I'd love to sketch you up on a following community call. So a big thank you for Preeti and Deepak for offering to present today. And I'm absolutely positive you guys are going to find this super interesting to check out today. One quick thing, we have been running this survey for the Microsoft Graph for a while now. If you have already filled this out, there's no need to fill this out again from the last, I think, 2 community calls. But just out of interest, it's super kind of useful for us to have this information about who you are, what kind of developer you are, and what things you're interested in. So please take the time to visit that link and fill out that survey. Take a copy of it and wait till the end so that you can focus on Preeti presenting in a moment. But it only takes 2 to 3 minutes to complete, and as I say, it's useful for us to see where people are coming from when they're joining this community call. I grabbed the entire blog post here to include this in here. We have had a lot of feedback from developers that sometimes breaking changes, although we put them in certain places, aren't very readily accessible by people, and they don't find out till after the fact. So the community call is yet another place where we'll be communicating anything that is deemed a breaking change. In this case, as you can see, it is a breaking change in the beta or beta endpoint, depending on wherever in the world you're from. And essentially, we've changed the signature, the schema of the operation call that you make to basically revoke sign-in sessions. And so this information is available on the Microsoft Graph blog. So if you go to graph.microsoft.com and you go over to resources and pick blog there, you'll see that. We have an RSS feed that you can subscribe to, so you can be notified in your whatever RSS feed you use. I typically use feedly.com. I have done for a long time and find it really great to be able to kind of monitor a lot of you that blog. I see a lot of people in this list that do blog about Microsoft Graph, and so I monitor everyone's blogs using Feedly as well. So if you're not sure how the best way to do that notification is, definitely check out something like feedly.com. And so we will continue to do this, not just for V1. Well, we don't make breaking changes in V1, but for beta endpoints, we're going to be doing a bit more forewarning directly via the blog now, which traditionally we haven't done in a formalized way. So that was just feedback. So big thank you. Keep that feedback coming, because it helps us to kind of change the way we work with the ecosystem around Microsoft Graph. So the 2 focus topics we've got today, I want to jump straight into because they are solid amounts of time, and I want to leave time for Q&A as part of this. So the first focus topic is from Preeti. So Preeti, welcome to Community Call again. Thank you for volunteering to present about the work you've been doing on the security API.
Hi, thanks, Jeremy.
If you want to just share your screen, I'll cancel my screen on my end.
Yeah, will do. That sounds awesome. Thank you. And yeah. I hope you're able to see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Hi, I'm Preeti Krishna, and I'm a senior program manager with the Graph Security API team, and particularly own DevX and customer experiences for the Graph Security API. So as we've there are different samples and all approaches to connect with the Graph Security API. Recently, we've kind of come up with a few new approaches to connect with the Graph Security API. So today I'll be talking more about delving deeper into those approaches, and would greatly encourage you to try it after this call and provide us more feedback as well. Yeah, so there are connectors for logic apps, flow, and power apps available, where you can have a workflow built using logic apps, and that can be exported to flow to run in flow as well, or vice versa. So logic apps, flow, logic apps is Azure Logic Apps, flow is Microsoft Flow, and then this power apps for mobile devices. These are basically workflow kind of operators that's available, orchestration solutions are available that can enable you to build different kinds of workflows to automate your solutions. These can be productivity solutions, security solutions, a mix of both solutions, and so on and so forth. So I'll actually show you a demo of how we can actually have both security and productivity kind of mix and match in an example scenario. And I'll also walk through how to actually go about building a simple solution like this. Basically, there are over 200 connectors available in the space from not only Microsoft products, but also from third-party solutions. So you have, for example, for Microsoft, we have SharePoint, Outlook connectors are there. There are connectors, the Graph Security connector is the new one that's available now. For third-party, there is ServiceNow connectors are available, Twilio connectors are available. There are like Palo Alto Networks is a connector as well, and so on and so forth. There are multiple connectors available. The ecosystem is pretty huge there. The second type of connector that we have is actually Power BI connector. And this enables you to actually get all the kind of rich insights that the Graph Security API has, and kind of build your reporting solutions out of that. So basically, you can actually tie your workflow solutions and reporting solutions and have all of that integrated approaches without having to write any code. So that's what we'll be looking at today. So without much ado, let's actually jump straight into the demo. And I will switch tracks for that real quick. So I hope you're able to see my screen, which is portal.azure.com. So basically, this is our Azure portal. You can sign in using your, I'll quickly get to this place so that we are all on the same page. Yeah, portal.azure.com. You can log in and it takes you to pretty much, this is their Azure portal that is there. You can search for, I have Logic Apps as my favorite, but then you can go to all resources and search for Logic Apps, and you will end up here in Logic Apps. So basically, this is where you can have all your workflow solutions created. So we'll walk through this example workflow first. So this is a security investigations and management's workflow solution. And let's see what happens here. Okay, it's taking a while to open up. Well, while it's loading up, so the security investigation management workflows goal is to actually enable automation of security management scenarios and your initial investigation scenarios. So in this workflow, what is happening is the basic premise is not all. So, I believe everyone is aware of alerts, right? Alerts are nothing but events that come up based on certain anomalies or like kind of erratic behavior that happens either with users or files or processes or hosts or something like that. Just as an example, for example, like if you have a user who has logged into a machine from, say, Redmond at some time, and just 15 minutes later logs in from, say, Budapest or someplace, and then that is not usual, right? So you have an alert issued by a security product. These security products could be like, in this particular scenario, it'll be an impossible travel alert issued by Azure Active Directory Identity Protection solution. Similarly, similar such alerts can be issued by other solutions, like Palo Alto Networks issues a malware, like kind of a alert when it detects a certain kind of a malware that has creeped into the network. So the Graph Security API enables you to integrate with different such security products using a unified alert schema. So you can write code to actually go ahead and integrate, or this is the other approach that we are looking at. So in this case, like not all alerts. So these alerts are actually, when you're running it in enterprise and all, usually there are lots of alerts that gets issued since enterprises run multiple security products. So you have the volume of alerts per day is of the order of like kind of tens of thousands. So how do you prioritize these alerts? Now you want to investigate these alerts, because if you don't, then you might end up with an attack. And you want to investigate the right set of alerts, right? And that's where it's always a balancing act. And that's where like kind of this workflow is just an example workflow to manage your security management and monitoring and investigations. So basically every 15 minutes, the alerts are looked into, new alerts are checked. And any alerts, we don't want to lose the alerts. So all the alerts that are triggered in the past 15 minutes are pushed out to Event Hub. So these are basically, this is using the Graph Security Connector. We actually get the alerts that triggered in the past 15 minutes, and we're sending it to Event Hub. So sending it to Event Hub will actually enable you to stream it through your security incident management or SIM solutions and all later on. So it's just to get that data and not lose it. Now, this is the left-hand side. The right-hand side is the interesting piece out here. The right-hand side, we have, we are actually prioritizing alerts for investigation. So the first four operators are basically just initializing initializers. We'll talk about that in a bit. But basically what happens here is we're just looking at high severity alerts for investigations. This is our OData query for that. And for each of these high severity alerts, we are actually looking at getting a list of analysts from our SharePoint. So basically, this is a SharePoint list that I have in the same tenant that houses my list of security analysts, because I want to ultimately give this alert, high severity alert for investigation using this workflow. So I have an analyst rotation list out here, and these are my list of analysts out here. So, so use the SharePoint connector, get the list of analysts, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at the list of, I'm updating the alert assignment to the first person on that list, and I'm adding comments for investigation too. So that happens, and then basically I'm setting a few variables so that I can create a table with all these high severity alerts. So over the past 15 minutes, I could have had kind of alerts. I could have had a couple of alerts, right? Or 2 or 3 high severity alerts. So I want to ensure that I build a table out for that so that it is like formatted well. That's what this does pretty much. So I'm adding, I'm populating a collection with each of these high severity alerts in this loop, and building a table out row by row using each one of these alerts. After that, I don't just want to send out an email to this analyst for investigating the high severity alert. I can add more value by doing an initial level of investigations, and that's what is happening here. So specifically what I'm doing here is I'm checking for the user state information in the alert. So an alert can have user information, it may not have it. It depends on the type of alert. For example, for the impossible travel alert that we spoke about, there will be user information associated with it because it is revolving around a user. Now, there can be the other example that I took about a malware alert, right? That may not be associated with the user. It's more of there'll be more network and like host information populated for that particular case. So different alerts have different information. In this case, since like for the initial round of investigations, I would like to look at the user information, and I'm getting a list of all alerts that matches this username pretty much. This is again using the graph security connector, and I get that for the past couple of hours, which all users had matched with the same principal, user principal name. And if those match, then I'm actually appending that as I'm creating another table, which has a list of all alerts that matches the user principal name, so that I can have that initial investigation as well, along with the call to action to investigate the new high severity alert. So that happens, and ultimately it's basically sending an email out for with both these tables, table of high severity alerts and the table of the user principal name that matches with these high severity alerts. And so that is more actionable for the person to investigate. So let me quickly run this. And then we look at how to build a small one as well, like this, just so that we can see how easy is it. It's very simple to build such workflows using the connectors. So you can see step by step what is happening here in the run. This enables you to easily debug and investigate as this is progressing. So I can see my high severity alerts out here already. This is the body, pretty much the output of the high severity alert. So I see one exploit guard blocked dynamic code execution alert and something else out here. Threat vulnerability alert as well. There are two of them. So, and then out here I can see the list of analysts that the connector pulled out. That's in the body out here. And I can even look at what is happening for each of these. So the alert is getting assigned. And then the table is created, and then the user information state is kind of checked for. And we can see here that it goes to the true block, and the true condition matches. And I'm getting a list of alerts, other alerts that matches with the same username. And so that bunch is here. And then there is the table creation part where each of this is appended. And here you can see the table getting formatted. So this is yet another connector. This is an inbuilt connector that is available in Logic Apps. And there's that email that is getting sent. So then that's what is happening here. And let's see where the email is now. That's the interesting piece. So let's switch tracks real quick. I have too many apps open here. So let me go back to my emails and pull that email out.
Did you want me to share the slide deck, Preeti?
That should be fine. Actually, I'm just pulling out the output email, and I think I lost, this one. So yeah, this is the sample email that, this is the email ultimately that gets sent out as a part of this. This is the high severity alert from Palo Alto Networks, and the initial investigation information of all the alerts that matches with this. There's Windows Defender ADP alerts with the same user principal name, and Azure Security Central, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that's the new email that we just got. Now just switching back to the workflow. So then, yeah, this is the getting back to the workflow. This is the workflow here now, and yeah, we just saw it running. Now let's take a look at how to build such a workflow as well. So any questions so far on the workflow and how it worked and the running part of it? Actually, I should have shown one more thing real quick. So each one of this also has, so this is the workflow, and then you have the code view also that you can look at to see it is a JSON file that shows what all connectors are being used, and the connection properties are defined. And you also have details on what are the logical steps that's going on in the workflow too. So let me quickly show that, and then we'll move on to how to build such a workflow as well. So if you look at the code view out here, so this gives you all the connection details. And then pretty much it is all the actions. So we looked at this, all your workflows should start with the trigger. So the trigger in our case was the recurrence trigger that we first started off with, which was out here. This is the polling happens every 15 minutes trigger. And then we have our actions, which are basically all the connectors that we saw. The SharePoint action was one, send email action was another one, getting high severity alerts was another one, matching with the user principal name was yet another one. So you can see all the flow out here pretty much in the code view. So that's and that way then you can share these templates after removing the subscription information and all as well. Share the workflow as well with others. So that's there, and now let's move on to how to build a connector. Logic app workflow. So basically it all starts with adding a new logic app. And out here, you just go and you can just create, you can name your logic app. It's going pretty slow today in this tenant.
Sorry, Preeti, to interrupt. We do have two other people presenting for 15 minutes. So
okay.
Is there any chance you can point to somewhere where they can follow instructions to do this?
Oh, yeah, sure. So
let me just kind of highlight.
Yeah, let me do that. Sorry about that. Yeah.
That's okay.
So yeah, so we have so there's this blog post available that actually talks about what are the other scenarios that you can enable using this with different other connectors and like kind of third-party connectors. Then we also have documentation out here for these connectors, which is out here that talks about how do you go ahead and authenticate with this for the first time connection, what happens, because you need to actually add this to your tenant and give admin consent to this application, the connector application. And then you can go ahead and what are the functions available, methods available for this is also there. And it's basically dragging and dropping and building out the connector as well, like the workflow as well. And there's yet another connector that we have, which is the Power BI connector, which is also, there's a blog post for that as well, and details on documentation as well is available for this, which is out here. And there are samples for this connector too. So with this, what you can actually look at is, I'll just show a quick view of what you can build. So you can just go get the latest update. The February update for Power BI dashboard includes this connector. Then you just do a get data, go to more, and go to online services. And you can go to your Microsoft Graph Security Beta and connect. So that will get you this connector, and there is the sample dashboard and template available on GitHub too. So basically, you can see all the alert properties, the schema that is exposed out here. This process information, user information, detailed user information actually, and then there's also like the host and other information, file information pertaining to the alert. And you can build different visualizations by just dragging, dropping, and building your workflows as reporting reports as you usually use with the Power BI solutions that you have.
That's great. Thanks very much, Preeti. And so if I just share my screen, we'll jump back to the slides.
So yeah, so let's go back to the slide. I have a couple more things to mention, and then we can switch.
Well, quickly. I'm sorry, but we have two other presenters, Preeti. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll
just one quick call to action.
Are you there, Preeti?
Yeah, I'm here. So you can share. You can start presenting. That should be fine. If you can, that way, then there's less. So basically, it's this one. So we have a survey as well for the connectors, and it'll be great if you can fill out the survey. There's just 3 questions. This will enable us to build more templates that will that for your scenarios for the connectors as well. So that's all with that, and there are resources about all of this that's available as well.
Awesome.
So with this, I would like to.
I appreciate you. Sorry to cut you off. We've got 2 other people that want to present their stuff too. So I'll make sure those links are in the chat messages as well. And we've been posting the blog posts and so forth in there as well. There's some great things there. And one thing to take away is that this is the first example of a Microsoft Graph Power BI connector that Preeti just showed. On a subsequent call, we're going to show how you can do this for other parts of the Microsoft Graph as well. And because we know that's been in high demand with the OData connectors too.
That's something we are looking at as well to expand this out. Yeah.
So Deepak, thank you for joining at such a late hour over there in India. It's exciting to have you on to talk about the PowerShell CLI SDKs. If you want to take over presenting your screen, I'll share the first slide so you can explain this. But what have you been working on, and how does this slide explain the early kind of days on what we're doing here?
Hey, thanks, Jeremy. So hi everyone, I am Deepak. I work as a senior software engineer in the Graph SDK team. In the past, we have been working on Graph SDKs for languages like Java, JavaScript, Objective-C, .NET. So currently, I have been focusing on generating the PowerShell CLI SDK. So this is still in early development stages, and this slide explains. With this slide, I wanted to give an overview of the generation process, the path which we are taking to generate the PowerShell CLI SDK. So one of the key tool which we are using is Autorest. So Autorest is a code generation tool which takes in the OpenAPI file and it generates the corresponding PowerShell commandlet. So as we all know that the Graph APIs, we expose OData with OData specification, the metadata we expose in the CSDL format. So what we are planning to do is we are planning to convert this CSDL format specification into OpenAPI specification, and after that we have the tool to convert it, and after that we get a file, one huge file with all the OpenAPI file with OpenAPI specification. We have written another tool to slice this one monolithic file into multiple modules so that we can generate multiple PowerShell modules instead of generating one single module with all the APIs. Our plan is to break it down into more manageable chunks. So how to like break it is something we are still discussing, but mostly we may go ahead with um, splitting it by the workload. So after the slicing of the API is done, we feed in that API open API specification document for that particular module to the auto-rest. And auto-rest has the capability now to generate the PowerShell commandlets. So there are like multiple teams also. So auto-rest is a quite popular code generation tool, and it has been successfully used by several teams to generate their commandlets. And yeah, so we have also been working on the .NET SDK, and in .NET SDK we have we have enhanced the HTTP client which we use in the .NET SDK. We have done enhancement there by including middlewares like say retry handler or redirect handler, which brings in the capability that a user doesn't need to write code in their end to do the retry or redirect. Instead, the SDK takes care of all those details. So, and the commandlets which gets generated by the autorest, we get the extensibility points there, and we are planning to enhance the generated CLI with uh, .NET SDK, so that we can bring in the richness of middleware and HTTP client into the PowerShell SDK. So once we combine that, the commandlets will be able to use this .NET HTTP client, and it will make the call over the wire. So I'll switch. So with that, I will um, take control, Jeremy. Let
Yep,
me
you
share
can
my
share your
screen.
screen. Yep, thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So, as I explained, so this is the metadata which Graph publishes, and this is the OData CSDL format. So, I'm just giving an over, I'm just showing like how the generation process will look like. So this document will be fed into. So we have a tool to convert this OData to OpenAPI specification. This is also like hosted in GitHub, and so this tool, using this tool, we are generating the OpenAPI file, which we have hosted again in this GitHub repo. So this v1.0.json, this is the converted file with OpenAPI specification. And we have another tool called Graph Slice. So this tool is hosted in Graph Slice 2.azurewebsite.net. So in this URL, we have hosted this service, which takes in uh, the monolithic complete graph OpenAPI specification and creates different slices of uh, uh, more like different slices of APIs. And so if we just see any one of the API call, so this looks like that, and we can also, so this one is currently in OpenAPI 2.0 version. We can change the specification for this to OpenAPI version 3. So Autorest takes in OpenAPI version 3 compliant document as an input. So we take this file, and then there is Autorest. So this Autorest tool takes in the OpenAPI specification 3 as an input, and it generates the corresponding commandlets. So okay. So I'll just show how we are actually generating the commandlets. So once we install autorest, so this is the command, the autorest -f PowerShell, and then we give the input file. It takes either JSON or the YAML file, and once we give this, it generates the corresponding commandlets. Okay. So here this generated folder contains these files. So these are like the modules, the metadata, and custom folder is where we can provide our own custom implementation and exports and generate. So this creates the corresponding commandlets. For the sake of this demo, so I have generated few commandlets here. So what? So once we generate the commandlets, we can build all the build the module by this command. So this is also a command. This gets generated when we generate the commandlet from the Open API. So yeah. Okay. So once we once we build the module, we can test the module right here in this current PowerShell by appending -test in this build script. So yeah, so now this module is loaded into my current PowerShell. So I can run command like say get command on this Microsoft Graph API. So this Microsoft Graph API is the module which is getting generated, and eventually this will be published to PowerShell Gallery. So a user of this module will have to simply do install module and Microsoft Graph API. So this will be installed in the PowerShell, and there will be commands like say, so in this particular for demo I have generated few commands. So one of the command I'll be demoing is get user. So if I just run say get user, so it runs, and it, so for demo purpose I have already authenticated with one demo tenant, and it is going and making a call to the graph.microsoft.com /v.0/me, and it is bringing back the user object, and I have just printed the user object right there in the commandlet. So in normal usage, we can also get it as an object and then pipe it to some other commands as well. So this is like a very early preview of how the PowerShell SDK will look like, and once we install the module, we can get the commands and we can just execute the command. So I think yeah, so that is all I had for the demo.
That's great. Thanks, Deepak. So in terms of progress there, will we be sharing these commandlets before we publish them so they're available in the install command if people wanted to experiment here? I mean, obviously they could go get auto-rest themselves and run that against the Open API definitions we have in that repo. But are we intending to share anything earlier than that?
The commandlets?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is still under development, but yeah, so once we get to the stage where we have the all the modules ready, we can share the command with the community.
Excellent, that's great. So the best way to keep up to date with this is following our blog, the Microsoft Graph blog, because we'll be announcing those things as we release those for people to experiment with. But for those that followed on with what Deepak showed, you could absolutely try this today, leveraging the API slice tool that I believe Daryl had a hand in, giving him some kudos while he's out at Disneyland today, probably screaming and crying on steep roller coasters. And the auto-rest generator that basically takes those slices is available there. And as Deepak said, that is used by a lot of teams in Microsoft to generate PowerShell commandlets. And then this is where we currently land our Open API files, where you can grab those and to be able to slice them up to run with that generator. So yeah. Thank you, Deepak, for running through that. So that's awesome.
Can I jump in for 30 seconds?
And
sure. Who's that?
It's Mark.
Oh, hey, sorry, Mark.
That's all right. I'm at home, and Deepak, I'll give you the floor back in just a second. Just one thing to clarify, the teaser that I threw out there, like we have some work to do to try to rationalize and productize some of these sorts of things. This graph slice thing is, it's running in a box under somebody's desk somewhere, right? So we need to be careful about how we use this for right now. But we are this is early bits, right? Like that's part of the reason that we put this call together is to get this sort of feedback and things. And we are working on a full strategy to actually productize this sort of stuff and make it properly part of Microsoft Graph.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is very early preview. We are also working with the Autodesk team to get some of the support for OpenAPI 3 specifications. So there are like a lot of different bits and pieces which needs to be sorted out. So this is very early preview of what is going to come.
Great. Thanks so much, Deepak. And again, I really appreciate you staying on so late in your evening as well. So big thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we have Zhao on the call as well. So Zhao, do you want to share your screen?
Yes, thanks, Jeremy. Yep, I will share my desktop.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, just let me know if you could see it.
Yep, we can see that. Yep.
Yeah, thanks. This is Zhao from the Office Accessibility team. Our team is working on the Excel graph and also work on the JavaScript API and also the Microsoft Flow. So before I started the slides, I will send you a survey link so that you could take 1 or 2 minutes to finish the survey once I finish the presentation. So this is actually a part of my demo. I will explain to you why this survey is part of my demo later. Yeah. So yeah, let's get started the presentation. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, one moment, since I used the online. So here is the agenda for my talk. So the main goal for me is to introduce the Excel graph to our developers or customers. Not sure how much you know about the Excel graph, and I'm not sure if you have ever used it or not. So here is the agenda. So I will do a simple introduction and show the architecture and show what we are working on and what's our best practice. At the same time, I will also show our roadmap for the Excel graph. Here is the overall architecture of the Microsoft graph. So the Microsoft graph acts as a gateway or proxy. Behind it, there are a bunch of Microsoft resources. So Excel graph is one of the services exposed through the Microsoft graph. We build the service on top of the Excel service that will leverage the powerful features from Excel. So we could take the actions against the Excel workbooks that was stored in the SharePoint or OneDrive. And also we provide a rich set of APIs so that we could take actions against the various workbook objects. So as for the scenario, we could definitely perform the calculations. So we support a bunch of functions that was supported by Excel. And also you could use it to store or track the data, and also you could generate the reports and use the Excel functionalities to analyze the results. This bunch of APIs or relationships that we already released in our Excel graph. The methods for the object means that the API for the object. Well, for the relationship, for example, for the workbook, we have 3 methods that was create session, refresh session, and close session. As for the relationship, we treat the worksheets or charts or tables as one of the relationships. So with it, we could get the tables with the workbook/tables or workbook/worksheets to get all worksheets. And of course, you could get the more detailed information from our published documentation. Yeah, here is a call flow for the Excel graph request. So the AGS here actually stands for the Microsoft proxy. So a request comes in, it will be passed through from the AGS to the host. As you know, our Excel online service was built on top of the WP host. So here we will do a translation to get the WP results from the host at first, and then we will send the request to our Excel service. The Excel service will retrieve the data from the host and get the data and take actions and then save the data. So the results will be returned back to the client side at the last step. Besides those APIs or methods I listed previously, we also introduced some new features recently. For example, for the calculation model, which will enable us to change or to disable or enable the auto-recalc in the current workbook. And also we released the comments API so that we could apply comments. And also we released the inner error section so that we could provide the more concrete error information in the response. And also we keep improving the reliability for our service so that our customers will not be blocked. And also we are planning to introduce the non-running creation so that for those big or complicated workbook, we could open it successfully. Yeah, those are some of our experiences that we made before, and here I summarized for your reference. For example, the first one is that for the session form model. Since for the Office documentation, considering the storage, so usually we needed to download and open a whole workbook, even though we needed to do a simple action. So for the session form, we provided the way to, okay, you have the manageability against the session, and then all other actions will be against the open session. Compared to the session form, the sessionist will, of course, introduce the pretty simple code logic, just one request. It will, in this request, it will contain all other actions, such as open the workbook, do the actions, close the workbook. So for some complicated or large workbooks, the sessionist might impact the performance or the reliability. So that's our experience say, okay, the session form might be the good suggestion for our customers. And the next is about the batch. As you know that actually the network traffic might consume much time for the request. So the Microsoft Graph service provided the batch service. And also with our experience, we could also suggest some others, such as we could insert multiple rows in one request. That's what we've already supported right now. And for the auto-recalc feature, some requests or some customers might not care about the auto-recalc. So some formulas might take pretty much time for the request. So it might introduce the timeout for the request. So that's why we say, okay, we could disable the auto-recalc feature on demand, just in case that we don't need it. You just need to set the data or read the data. You don't care about the auto-recalc feature. I also listed some common errors here for your reference. Those are our common errors, and also it's pretty easy to hit. For example, for the 400 non-blank cell offsheet, that's because that, okay, there might be the last row or last column, there was a data. And when we try to insert a new row, so it will try to shift those non-empty cells of the workbook. In that case, it might introduce the data loss. That's why in this case we will throw any error like this. For 400 or is expected error, that's because that maybe something wrong happened to the request, or something wrong happened or some by design error. For those 500, such as the general exception, is definitely the internal error that in our service side. Currently, this kinds of error is mainly caused by the auto recalc. Something wrong happened to the formula or for the function. In case for the file corrupt, try to repair. That's because that the workbook was corrupted. So in that case, maybe we needed to try to repair it in the Excel application, and then try it again with the new workbook. So here is our roadmap for the ongoing work against our Excel graph. The first one is for the reliability. We have been working on it for a long time, and we also got a great progress. And next, we will also introduce the sorting and also release the run categorization, and also we will try to improve the sessionless model to introduce the better experience to customers. And we will also announce the Excel graph for MSA account and ship more APIs. Actually, we have a bunch of pending APIs in our list. Yeah, we will do that on demand based on our requirements from customers. So that's all my slides. So let's come back to the survey. You could take some minutes to do the survey. So I could see the response here. So now I will introduce, so what's the relationship with the survey and my demo. So this survey was actually based on the Excel. The Microsoft Forms provided the survey. It has the feature named as data sync. It will be used to sync the data between the forms and the Excel. So as you could just see here, there are 3 responses. So I could also get the 3 items in the worksheet. If we have more responses, we could see it here in real time. It's real-time data sync. So since I did not get new responses yet, so this is still keeps the 3 here. Yeah, maybe we could get a bit more. Yeah, for example, I could make, yeah, we have 4 here. Let's wait for several seconds. Yeah, we have this data here. This is the 4th one. Yeah, that's a pretty simple scenario in our Excel graph. Let's just use it to set the data to add a new table row. Yeah, yeah, that's all from my presentation. Yeah, just I'm pretty helpful. Hope to get your responses. You could feel free to provide your feedbacks through this survey. Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Thanks very much, Zhao. And please fill in these surveys. It's super helpful, not just for demo purposes, but also for Zhao and the team to understand, you know, if you're already using the Excel graph and if you have any feedback. Obviously, all the different PM teams actually monitor user voice for everything that goes on there in terms of feedback to at a broader feature set level. But sometimes it's super useful to understand who's using it already and if they have any feedback based on the scenarios they're using. So Zhao, again, much like Deepak, thank you for joining at such a late hour. I really appreciate you taking time to showcase what we're doing there in the Excel space as well. So big thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And then one thing that we try to do every month on the call is just to say thank you to people that are in the community that are writing, blogging, podcasting, presenting at conferences and so forth. And there's a variety of us on the PM team that, follow the different people that contribute to this stuff on the internet. And just as some shout outs this month, there were some really cool ones that we've had around the kind of manipulating the unsubscribe ability if you may be in the scenario that you're going on holiday or going on vacation and you wanted to unsubscribe from mailing lists. Glenn Scales has got a great blog post there that iterates through your inbox using the Graph APIs and then uses the actual unsubscribe operation that's available in the Outlook APIs on Graph to then go and automatically do those unsubscribes to those mailing lists so that when you get back off your vacation, like Unigist has, which we're very excited to have her back in the office, is that you'll actually be able to not have 1,000 mailing list DLs cluttering up your mailbox on your return. And so it's just one kind of example of a great useful API in the sense of an unsubscribe API that you can use to help all sorts of scenarios within your organizations as little kind of tools that you can add to Outlook or even scripts that you can run yourselves for your own personal productivity. And then Stefan Bauer has written a bunch of stuff around NPN versions to upgrade SPFX solutions. So for SharePoint developers in the room, this is super useful, but it's also useful for other areas of NPM as well. And this is why I listed that there for just kind of M365 development all up out of interest. And then Andrew Connell, that does a lot of work in the SharePoint space and obviously in the Microsoft Graph space as well. There are some great scenarios for using Azure Function Apps authorized and authenticated as an Azure Active Directory user. The way that Andrew's written that post is specifically for calling an API that's hosted in Azure Functions securely from an SPFX web part. But the same principles can apply if you wanted to call securely your own API that then knock-on effect calls the Microsoft Graph as part of that Azure Function app. And there's going to be a bunch of demonstrations we're going to be doing at Build this year that will show that in a lot more detail about the benefits of kind of having these secure calls go through your middle tier layer, much like you would do with SPFX. So Andrew's got a very detailed blog post there. And then in addition to that, he did a blog post where he was creating custom permissions in Azure Active Directory that his application understood. So a little bit like you do with roles-based authentication, you can actually have custom permissions that your users can grant the application, and then you have logic flows within your apps to check whether the user has consented to that permission or not, and then the app either does or does not do that piece of code flow within its own application. So again, if you have got blog posts you're writing around Microsoft Graph and Azure AD and securing API calls, I'd love to be able to share this and give you guys a little bit more traction in these calls. We will put these in the show notes as well that are available on the Microsoft Graph. If you go to graph.blog, graph.microsoft.com and go into the resources menu and click on the blog. And as someone rightly pointed out, the RSS feed is actually in the header. So if you grab the Graph URL out of your browser window and paste it into things like Feedly, it will pick the RSS feed out. We have an open action, which has jogged my memory that we need to go add that to the page there. So thank you to Curtis for highlighting that in the messages there. So again, if you have any opportunity to present, you've got some demos you want to show around the Microsoft Graph, we'd love to hear from you. And a big thank you to all of our guests today. Just a quick reminder that our next call will be April 2nd at 8 a.m. And if you have any questions you'd like us to try and tackle in the calls, and if you want to promote this call with anybody else, there is the AKA link, aka.ms/Microsoft Graph call. And just a quick reminder, if you haven't filled out that Graph survey already, if you could fill that out, gives us a great idea of what you're working on the Graph and what areas interest you, and it gives you an ability to provide any feedback on anything we've done with the Microsoft kind of Graph out there in the real world. So a big thank you for joining today. This will be recorded if you wanted to retrack through the demos that have been done and follow this on your own paths. And all of the links that are inside of the URL and the messages we'll put in the blog post too. So a big thank you for Preeti, Deepak and Zhao for presenting this month. And we look forward to keeping in touch until the next call in April.
Thank you.
Thank you.